This shot coming up, which is being filmed on a full frame camera by the way, can only be achieved with a lens like this in my hand, and I had the privilege to. How's it going, guys? Hope you guys doing well. If you're new to this channel, welcome. So the type of lens I am talking about is a full frame 2x anamorphic zoom lens such as this, or lenses, because I have two of them. So this is the 40 to 80 millimeter, and currently I'm filming on the 70 to 135 millimeter. So this lens is available in multiple mounts. I'm gonna list them in the description below, but currently this one right here, this is a PL mount. So you can adapt this to most cameras, including the one I'm filming with right now. That's a Lumix S9. So full transparency about this video, I had some mixed feelings about this video initially. So the condition of this video, yes, Laowa did send me this lens to review about a little over a month ago, but the condition is that I have to return this as soon as I finish this video. Now, YouTuber accepting product as a review, that's like a whole nother video and a monster of a video in itself. So I'm gonna maybe address that at some time in the future, but I had to really decide, like, do I really want to test this? Is it worth my time? Now, I remember seeing the first specs and I saw T4.5 and the weight was 2.8 kilograms. So that was a little bit of a red flag for me, but I did some research and found out this is a very rare type of lens. Now, Laowa did make that Proteus anamorphic zoom lens not too long ago, but that's for Super 35 crop sensor lens. In fact, most of the anamorphic lens that are zoom in the Hollywood out there is for crop sensor Super 35. Now, the closest thing I found was the Panavision anamorphic zoom lens. The 37 to 85 millimeter T series is the full frame, but that lens is way out of reach. Like, I can't even find pricing for rental. I mean, like, I probably have to sell a car for that one. So when Laowa told me this was affordable and it was 2x anamorphic and it goes up to 135 millimeter. Now, if you put 2x and 135 millimeter together in one sentence, that's the kind of thing filmmakers will drool over. Not even like regular drool. We're talking like oval shaped drools. So at the end of the rental period, I would either feel like I wasted all my time, or it would be like the coolest experience and really open my eyes and what it's like to use a lens like this. So in this video, we're gonna go over some test charts. We're gonna find out what is the exact stretch factor, is it constant stretch, and also where does this lens fall short on. And I'm gonna try to link all these charts and tests into a real life experience. So I was lucky enough, one of my friends, his name is Ivan, he's a very talented filmmaker in Washington, DC also. When Laowa offered this lens to me around the exact same time, Ivan was asking me to help him with his new passion project and making a short film, and that was a perfect real life opportunity to test this lens out. I was also able to use these lenses for interview style shoots. I even brought this lens to a wedding reception and recorded a toast. But before we go over all that, let's talk about the physical aspects and the build quality of this lens. You can't really tell from the pictures. So the best way to describe this lens, I would have to say, is built like a tank. I mean, like, this thing is absolutely solid metal everywhere, very heavy. So I mentioned that one of the lenses was 2.8 kilograms. Actually, it's this one. 40 to 80 is 2.8 kilograms, and the 70 to 135 is a little bit lighter at 2.6 kilograms. So yes, it's pretty heavy, but I would have to say it's very well balanced. It's not too heavy in the front or the back. It's like right in the center. Now, the reason why the 40 to 80 millimeter is heavy, this one actually has one more element and one more group. So the 40 to 80 millimeter has 23 elements and 15 groups, and the 70 to 135 millimeter has 22 elements and 14 groups. So basically, it's a lot of glass, but when you guys actually see the test results, you'll see why this one has one more. All right, let me go ahead and take off the lens cap. So the lens cap's pretty nice too. Very easy to take off, yet it's very secure, so it does stay in there pretty nicely. It is made out of aluminum. So we got the aperture ring right here going from 4.5 to T22, and this is the star right here. So this is the zoom. So it's all internal zoom and nothing protrudes out or in, and this thing is so smooth. Yeah, you can tell this is quality, but it's also nice that there's witness mark on left side, but also on the right side. And let's talk about this focus ring. So this is probably the longest focus throw I ever experienced. So this is 305 degrees of focus throw. My arm can barely reach it. Now, it is pretty smooth to spin it. However, because it's such a long focus throw, there are a couple spots that are a little bit stiffer than the other. It's probably because I haven't really broken in this lens yet, but I like that you can really really fine tune the focus manually, especially on the close minimum focus distance. Like you can go from 2 feet, look how far the 3 feet is, like that's 3 feet. Yeah, you can really dial on the focus. Now on my last anamorphic lens review video, I said I'm gonna level up my lens review each time. Yeah, so I did. I got a camera rig with
frickin' laser beams attached,
so I can really measure how accurate this witness marks are in terms of focus. So on the 40 to 80 millimeter at 80 millimeter, when I measure 5 feet exactly, which is 60 inches, it actually said 5 feet on the witness mark, right on the dot. However, on the 70 to 135 millimeter, it was a little bit off. For example, at same 80 millimeter at 5 feet, it read 58 and 3/16 of an inch. It's supposed to be 60 inches. Now, does it actually matter? Now, it would matter if you're swapping lenses using the witness mark. So if you measure 5 feet in one lens and you want to swap it using exact witness mark at 5 feet, it's going to be a little bit off. And the last physical aspect I want to go over before we go over some juicy chart is the flange depth. Now, I should mention that the 40 to 80 millimeter and the 70 to 135 millimeter physical length-wise, it is identical. So the flange is also going to be the same, but look how deep this is. So I measured this. So this is a little bit over 1 inch from the breech lock. If you measure from the base of the lens, this is about 1.25 inches. And that's not a huge deal for most adapters, but when it comes to adapters with ND, it's actually built into it. So that's gonna get in the way. So something to note, but let's get into some charts. So this Laowa Sunlight Series 2x Anamorphic Zoom Lens, it is one sharp lens. This is the 40 to 80 millimeter wide open. You can tell center is super sharp, but being anamorphic, this is pretty sharp in the corners too. And as you stop down, you can tell that there is almost no chromatic aberration on both ends. Usually when you get to like extreme ends like T22, there's some chromatic aberration, but this thing is clean. And just letting you guys know, this chart was filmed by the Lumix S9 Open Gate 6K. And you probably noticed that there's some vignetting in the corners as you stop down especially. But you have to remember this is 2x anamorphic. Even if you use 2.39 to 1 cinemascope aspect ratio, yeah, those corners, it's gonna be gone. So when I tell you that there is some heavy vignetting at 40 millimeter, again, if I use 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio, there's going to be very minor vignetting at 40 millimeter. So the sharpness test on the 70 to 135 millimeter is going to be very close to the 40 to 80 millimeter, except the fact that the 70 to 135, it does have a little bit more chromatic aberration wide open, and it's not bad at all. It's just that when I compare them to directly side by side, I do notice it a little bit. So when it comes to longitudinal chromatic aberration, yeah, 40 to 80 is absolutely clean. Even at wide open, this is pretty impressive. So as expected, 70 to 135, yeah, you can definitely tell there's some chromatic aberration here. So that minimal chromatic aberration that shows up on charts, in real life, you're not gonna even really notice it. In fact, this is a pretty clean image, but I thought I'd show you guys the chart and do a really close comparison because now you know that there's one more element in the 40 to 80 and it really shows. So while we have this chart open, let's talk about distortion. So if you look at this 40 to 80 millimeter and the 70 to 135 millimeter, you can tell this is a very clinically clean, minimal distortion image. Now, obviously at 40 millimeter, you're gonna get a little bit more distortion, but if I were to categorize this very minimal distortion, this is a slight barrel distortion on top and bottom and pincushion distortion on left and right. But it's so neutral that if you really want barrel distortion, you could probably do that in post. Now let's talk about focus breathing. Out of all the lenses I have tested, I would have to say this has the best focus breathing control. Yeah, this 40 to 80 millimeter is just near perfect. Sure, there's a little bit more focus breathing on this 70 to 135, but this is so minimal. I wish I recorded my reaction when I first saw this because I was so impressed by this. Now, another impressive thing about these two lenses is that minimal focus distance. Now, these are anamorphic lenses. Like I should be expecting about 3 feet for anamorphic minimal focus distance, but most of the time, 40 to 80 millimeter minimum focus distance is 2 feet, and the 70 to 135 millimeter is 2 feet and 7 inches, which is about 78 centimeters. What? Now, I did test this with my freaking laser, and I have to tell you, you can actually push it a little bit closer. Yeah, so the witness mark lets you go a little bit beyond the minimal focus distance. So on the 40 to 80 millimeter, I was getting a little bit better than 24 inches, and the 70 to 135 millimeter, I was getting a little bit better than 31 inches, which is freaking amazing. But what's even more amazing is that this is parfocal, meaning I can zoom all the way to 135 millimeter and get 31 inch of minimal focus distance. All right, so this next topic is my favorite, and that is this actually constant stretch? And what is the actual stretch factor? Now, I do this with every single one of my anamorphic lens review videos, so I'm not gonna go into details about how I get this test results, but if you're interested, you can check out these videos. But here's the results. So the 40 to 80 millimeter, this is actually 1.97 stretch factor. So if you actually wanna use this in post, you wanna stretch the image by 197%. And the 70 to 135 millimeter, this one actually pretty much on the dot, 2x. But over the years, I try to really get more accurate result for these. So margin of error at about a little less than 1%. So I'm gonna tell you that at 10 feet and above, I was getting about 1.99 stretch factor. So there is a margin of error there, but I kept getting the results. So just letting you know. So when I use the 70 to 135 millimeter footage, I'm just gonna pick in the middle at 199.5% stretch. And yes, both of these lenses have constant stretch, whether you focus close or far, those are the stretch factors. Now, we can't have an anamorphic lens review without talking about flares and bokeh. So let's talk about flares. So you guys already saw that intro, and the flare of this lens is very subtle. When I was helping Yvonne film that passion project, we had a pretty bright 500 watt light outside the window shining in as a backlight. Even then, it didn't flare. The only time I really saw a flare in real life, it was during that reception toast footage. Now, there are 3 flare flavors. So there's silver, amber, and blue. So I picked the silver one because I thought that was the most natural looking. But obviously, each of the flavors have different coatings and might react a little bit differently. But let's do a little RGB ABCDEFG test with this lens flare. So this is what blue light's gonna do to that coating, if you guys can see that. This is what green light looks like on that coating. And this is what red light's gonna look like on that coating. And lastly, let's just do one that's daylight. There you go. And this is going to be an extreme case, obviously, because I'm literally shining the light directly at the lens. But overall, it's very subtle. Again, anamorphic lens flare is very subjective, but there you have it. All right, we're going to need some biffs for the next section because there's going to be a lot of drooling. So let's talk about 2x anamorphic juicy bokehs. But there's a little catch to these lenses. I noticed that both of these Laowa Sunlight lenses only have 10 aperture blades. So the question is, it's an oval bokeh. Is the blades going to show up on these tests? First, taking a look at 40 to 80 millimeter at 80 millimeter, you can tell this is a very juicy 2x anamorphic bokeh. Very little minimal chromatic aberration around the bokeh balls and little cat's eyes around the corners to give that little swirly look. So that was close subject, minimal focus distance around 5 feet. Let's go ahead and step back about 10 feet and see what this looks like. Yeah, this is where you kind of see the blades. I mean, if I didn't tell you, you might not notice, but if you pay attention, yeah, I can kind of see the blades. Now, this is interesting. If I stop this down to about T8, you start to see the sun star effect. So I thought that was pretty unique. And in case you want to know what 40 millimeter bokeh at T4.5 looks like, this is what that looks like. Oh, you're not drooling yet? Okay, let's go over the 70 to 135 millimeter. So if you were to compare this at 80 millimeter, just like before, this is what that looks like side by side. It is interesting, you can see the blades a little bit more on the 70 to 135 millimeter at 80 millimeter. But if I were to compare the 40 to 80 versus the 70 to 135, you do have a little bit more chromatic aberration around the bokeh balls at that 70 to 135 millimeter lens. But the real question is T4.5 enough? And I would say because this is a 2x anamorphic, the bokeh is exaggerated a little bit at that expected focal length. And that T4.5, I do find that to be a very good aperture when I'm doing manual focus during interview setups like this. One, I can manually focus pretty quickly. Two, even if the subject moves around just a little bit, they're still in focus. And I never had like the eyebrow in focus, but not the eyeballs. Now, I wouldn't consider this lens as a run and gun gimbal kind of lens. On a tripod class, this is still run and gun in a sense that you can zoom in, don't have to change your focus. And the minimal focus distance on these are so good, you don't need to put on and off a diopters. All right, so the one thing I haven't addressed yet is the pricing of these lenses. If you clicked on the link below, you probably found out already. So these lenses, so far, I'm told that it's gonna be $6,000 each. So if you get the set though, you get a little discount. It's $11,000 for both lenses. But I still think that's an affordable range. You have to remember there's at least like 3 focal length inside this one lens. For example, this 40 to 80 millimeter, I think of this lens as 40, 55, and 80 millimeter. And as far as I know, this is the only full frame around $6,000 lens you can do that dolly zoom effect like the intro that has oval bokeh and flares. And in case you're wondering how I pulled that move off by myself, I use this PD Movie LiDAR motor. So one of them just has to be LiDAR. So this is the new version. This is the Live Air Smart 4, which I'm actually going to make a video on. So if you guys are interested in, you definitely want to subscribe and not miss that video. So am I glad I made this video? Absolutely yes. This is a marvel of a lens engineering, especially this 40 to 80 millimeter. So I want to give a special thanks to Laowa for letting me experience that, and huge thanks to Yvonne. I mean, we made some awesome films before, but this is probably the most fun I had. So Yvonne, thank you so much for letting me be part of your passion project. Now, around the same time this video is being published, Yvonne will be uploading his short film on his channel. So I'm going to link that in the description below. So go check him out. And I got to thank Dennis. Dennis was the BTS shooter. Dude came with a red camera, by the way, and gave me some awesome footage. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you everyone for watching to the end. Till next time, guys, stay stretchy. 2X.